Hi everyone, my name is Liam Macklin. Welcome to the Dutch Golden Age. Anyone who's new, think Fiveable, check Fiveable on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Okay, so in the stream today, what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about how did the Dutch Republic become a superpower from basically a backwater country with barely like a population of 1 million+ people. They became like the most successful economy in Europe for around the 17th century. And it was a big surprise for a lot of people. How did they manage to do it so quickly and become so successful? We'll talk about the Dutch economic boom. We'll talk about their very unique political system, which doesn't really have an equivalent in Europe. The Stadtholder, what's that all about? They don't have absolute monarchy like most European nations, but they don't have a king or a real monarch. So that's a very unique situation. Also, a little bit unique is the Dutch religious toleration, allowing minority groups in Europe, such as Jews, to come and live in the Netherlands and experience freedom of religion, or the Puritans, the famous Puritans that later made it to America, also lived there. And of course, the most interesting part for most people, at least for me, is teaching about the golden age of the Dutch art. And we got a little poll going at the bottom here. Who was your favorite Dutch painter? So you can pick, I think, from Vermeer, Rembrandt, halls and so forth. So maybe we can change your mind also throughout this stream. Okay, so if you look at the concept outline for the course description in AP Euro, I don't know if your teacher shared that with you, so you can actually look and see specifically what's going to be on the exam. And looking at the key concept outline for this year exam, we're seeing that the Dutch Republic actually appears several times in the description. So this is the things you want to focus if you're thinking about exam time, what will be on the exam. So one point, the first point they're mentioning here is about the Dutch had established their own republic as a part of a Protestant revolt, a successful revolt against Spain, and they achieved independence. So that's a very unique situation. Banking and finance also is a big point of Dutch history. They're kind of the founders of the whole joint stock company, and they had a lot of influence in the banking world industry. The rivalry between the Dutch, the Portuguese, the French, the British in Spain or in Asia, that's another important topic about competition between European nation. And what most people think about when they think about the Golden Age, the last point is art and artistic movement and the commercialism as a part of the society, Dutch painters such as Rembrandt, Vermeer, and so forth. So that's the kind of things that you want to think about. That's what's going to be on the test. If there's going to be questions about the Dutch Republic, we might talk about stuff here that is not all of it is exactly relates to the specific exam. Okay. Anyone join us online? Thumbs up. Tell us where you're from before we get into it. See, more people are joining in. Anyone else wants to share where they're from? But tell us what you're studying right now. What are you teaching right now? I'm currently actually teaching the Age of Exploration, where I just talked about today about Magellan and Christopher Columbus. All right, so let's get into it if there's no more people. And again, if you have any questions, also in the bottom, there is ask a question option. So throughout the stream, if anything is not clear, you can use that and ask a question. And at the end of the stream, I will get into questions. So let's get into it. So the Dutch Revolt, let's start from the beginning. So historically, the Netherlands were part of other people's republics. They were not a real republic. So Charles V, the famous big chin Habsburg emperor, inherited the 17 provinces that make today the modern day countries of the Netherlands and Belgium, but they were not countries yet. They were independent provinces, and each one of them had a self government, and each enjoyed a basic autonomy to make their own laws and rules. Now, when the things started to go bad, and with the Dutch actually starting to think about their independence, everything started to go sour when Philip II, who is Charles V's son, inherited the provinces from his father, and he decided to kind of consolidate his power and make it clear that he's in control. And again, the context is we're talking about the 16th century. It's kind of like the Counter-Reformation period, and Philip II is a strong Catholic, as was Charles V, and he decides basically to come hard on the Dutch, which some of them are embracing ideas of Calvinism and Protestantism, and Philip II is not interested in that. Philip basically is making classic mistakes here. Like if you actually read, you guys studied Machiavelli, The Prince, he's actually making the two biggest mistakes that Machiavelli is warning in The Prince. Number one, don't try to change religion of people. And number two, don't raise taxes. So Philip is making two crucial mistakes. He's raising taxes, and he's trying to push Catholicism onto the throats of Protestantism. And this is going to be met with a stiff resistance. So we're not going to go to all of that rebellion and what happened around that time. Suffice it to say that this basically started what is known as the 80 Years' War. Yet 80 years to get independence. You see the year 1568 to 1648, and the 7 northern provinces decide to unite, and led by Holland, who was the biggest one of the 7 northern provinces, and they signed the Union of Utrecht, and they declared their independence. They didn't get independence yet, but they declared their independence. So basically the 7 northern provinces are going into making a treaty and getting into war. The South will also, the 10 southern provinces will also join the fight. So eventually in 1609, they kind of come to an uneasy peace or truce for a while that would last for a certain period, and then fighting will resume again during the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648. And finally in 1648 is a part of the Peace of Westphalia. If you study that 30 Years' War, that's a whole separate topic. Finally, the 7 northern provinces officially are forming a republic, and they will become a leading commercial power. It's during that time that they emerge as a power. So basically, from the 17 provinces that are separated, what's going to happen, you're going to have 7 northern provinces that are going to become the Netherlands as an independent republic. And by the way, a classic mistake, student a lot of time refer to them as Holland. Holland is just one out of the 7, and a lot of people just call Netherlands sometimes Holland, so that's a separate thing. And the 10 bottom provinces are still going to be under Spanish control. And also, if we connect to religion, we can say that the Netherlands, the 7 northern provinces, are going to become Protestant, mainly Calvinist. And the 10 bottom ones, Philip is still going to be successful keeping them, and they will be Catholics. And that's going to also start a migration pattern that Protestants in the southern part are going to move to the north, or Catholics are going to move to the south. But also the Netherlands is going to be open, and you're going to have like Portuguese Jews or Spanish Jews or Lutheran coming over to get some freedom of religion. So that's basically a little background about the Dutch independence. Any comments or questions up till now? And again, if you want to make any comment, drop something in the chat box. Everyone can hear me loud and clear? You never know, sometimes you're talking to the mic. We have 11 people in, and we have 6 people on live now. Feel free to drop a note, say hi in the chat box, or add a question to the topic before we continue. All right, so let's continue. Let's talk about the Dutch economic boom. So again, that could be a causation question, a short answer question. So how did a small nation with a few resources, they didn't have too many natural resources. Also, if we talk a little bit geography, they were kind of like below sea level, and they had a lot of water problems. So how did they become a superpower? And Amsterdam became Europe financial center up till the French Revolution. Actually, Antwerp in modern day Belgium was the center of finance, and that started to move to Amsterdam. So the answer, one short answer, is trade. The Dutch, if you want a comparison, kind of similar to the England, were very, very good in the whole business of being a maritime or a ship-oriented country. In 1602, they founded the Dutch East India Company. Okay, we have people from Vermont. Okay, great. Hashtag Snyder's Call is great. Thanks for joining us in and giving us. It's good to see information where people are coming from all across the United States, what people are studying and so forth. So any information you want to pop in the chat box, talk amongst yourself, it's all good. So back to our topic. So we have the Dutch East India Company. That's a very important corporation. If you want to, if any of you are taking notes, that's definitely something that you want to remember. And we have their symbol over here. It's a joint stock company that was basically founded to capture the East, the whole Asian spice trade from the Portuguese. So the Portuguese were the first. If you guys study the age of exploration, the Portuguese were the first nation to get into the whole age of exploration, grabbing the spice trade, and the first one to get into the slavery in Africa and getting into Asia. After them were the Spanish. So the Dutch were a little bit later into the game, but they were very interested in capturing the markets in Asia, and they were chartered by the governments, the first company also to sell stock, and they made an insane amount of profits for people who were investing in their company, something like 33% annual profits. You couldn't get profits like that any other place. So again, a joint stock company, in case you study that, like Jamestown is an example of a joint stock company. Instead of one investor putting his money, and then if he fails, loses his own money. When you have a joint stock company, you have a group of people who are investing in a company. And if the company is successful, like the Dutch East India Company was, you make a huge amount of profit. So the Dutch East India Company, you can think about it as the first multi-international corporation, kind of like, I don't know, the equivalent today, like a Microsoft or like an Apple, like a huge corporations that made all of its investors very, very rich. And they eventually achieved so we can say a monopoly in the East India trade. They managed to corner the market and eventually kick out the Portuguese in many things. They also were the first country to achieve monopoly in trade with Japan, for example. They were the first country to get into that location. So that was about the Dutch East India Company. Now, the same concept was say, why not also try to make it into the Americas? So in 1621, they founded the Dutch West India Company, and they were interested in going into the Americas and making profit there. Now, again, not to make the Dutch Golden Age is just a beautiful time about art and painting. There was a lot of cruelty involved in becoming so successful. So they transported or were involved in the transportation of many Africans into slavery, into Brazil, into the Caribbean, to work in sugar plantation. And they established trading stations in Africa. And they also captured and destroyed Spanish ships and the Portuguese ports. They really, really were, the way they became successful is by also using force, or using violence, and subduing indigenous people in Africa and Asia and so forth. So all of that basically allowed them to corner the market and become very, very successful and make Amsterdam the center of finance. So Dutch East India Company, Dutch West India Company is kind of like two good example for you if you want to write about the success of the Dutch industry. Moving into banking. So again, at banking, in case you studied like the Medici Bank, banking is kind of like a new phenomenon, also connected to the Renaissance. The whole idea, if you want to start a business, you need a loan, you need a credit. So Amsterdam kind of became like a banking center. And again, Amsterdam made this huge jump from being, a backwater country, just, like 30 years ago. And in 30 years, they made this huge jump to become like the if you wanted to invest your money, all of a sudden Amsterdam was like the safest, soundest place you can invest your money. And the profits were really, really high. And some financial historians claim that this is the first modern place where the stock exchange started and the creation of joint stock companies. So yes, the Dutch were very, very in the beginning of this whole game. And also, if you want to connect to that, religious toleration allowed them to get a lot of talented people to come to the Netherlands, such as Jews who were deported from Spain in 1492, or Huguenots that were thrown out of France. So a lot of smart and successful business people came into the Netherlands that other countries kicked them out due to religious situations. So yeah, the global economy, the Dutch were basically everywhere. They also created, anyone knows what the colony that they created in North America? Who in the chat box know what's the name of the colony they created in North America? Or what's the name of the colony? So they created New Netherlands, or created New Amsterdam, which before it was New York, it was New Amsterdam. So they founded that colony and had a lot of success in it before the English came over and kicked them out in 1660 and changed New Amsterdam, New Netherlands into New York. So they were everywhere from Japan, from India, Africa, very, very successful, but on the backs of people. Another interesting phenomenon that is the Dutch were doing so well financially. I was going to say that we were talking about Harlem the other day. Okay, great. They were doing so successful. One way that you can see that there was this huge economic boom in the Netherlands. One classic example of that is Tulip Mania, that you can see it. Some people refer to as the first economic boom, like the bubble, basically. Like tulip prices just kept on getting higher and higher in the stock market, and people were willing to pay so much money, something I wrote here, like the constant equivalent of 3 years' wages for like just a small group of tulips, and the bubble just kept getting higher and higher until like there was this huge crash. So that's like one example that the people were doing so well in Amsterdam, and they were buying all these luxury goods. All of a sudden, Amsterdam, from a backwater country, now they're bringing like porcelain from China. They got spices from everywhere. All these goods are just coming up. So Tulip Mania is another example of the economic boom that the Netherlands experienced. Let's talk a little bit about Dutch government. They have a very, very unique form of government. Now, again, if you're studying the 17th century, if you already got to that location and you're starting to study absolute monarchs, so absolute monarchs are people such as, anyone can give me a name or two of an absolute monarch you might be studying now? 17th century? Any absolute monarch? France? Louis XIV, of course, the easiest one. Anybody? Anyone else? So Louis XIV from France is kind of like the model of the absolute monarch. And then we have Peter the Great, Frederick the Great, all these greats. Everyone is kind of establishing and taking more and more centralizing their power. So if you go against absolute monarchy, there might be only two countries that are going in a different direction. And one country is England. If you listen to my previous stream, that experiencing the Glorious Revolution and kind of creating a constitutional monarchy, and the Dutch. So the Dutch and the English are the only two countries in Europe that are moving away from absolute monarchy, but and creating like a more limited power. So England is kind of like a limited monarchy or constitutional monarchy, and the Dutch are creating a unique situation. So they adopted a republican form of government, which there was no really power in the hand. There was no monarch, and they had an elected assembly. The seven provinces basically created that each province would have a leader in the control of the province. And that leader, his name is called the Stadtholder, or if you want to work on your Dutch, anyone taking Dutch classes, is Stadtholder, which translate to a placeholder, like basically taking the place of. Taking the place of what? Basically, maybe the leader. So each province picked a stadtholder, and he was kind of like, his job kind of transitioned from historically being like a steward from the previous government to become a rebel leader during the revolution, to later on to the leader of that specific province. And interestingly enough, even though there was election and many, theoretically, a lot of people can get the job, it seems like most of the stadtholder came from the House of Orange. So the House of Orange dominated the stadtholder position, and the most dominant people were the wealthy merchant that started to arise during that time. And anyway, the provinces, each one sent their representative to a legislative body, kind of the state general, and they decided about local affairs such as declaring war, taxes, and so forth like that. So a very unique government, stadtholder, kind of hard to define, not a monarch, but not in a kind of, not like a full democracy, get elected by the people, but a small representative, and mainly from the House of Orange. That's why orange is such an important color in Dutch nationalism, like orange carrots that the Dutch kind of like created for nationalistic reasons. I don't know if you know, carrots were actually not originally the orange color. I don't know if you've ever seen in the store, there's some carrots like in black and white. So part of nationalistic thing, they created orange, kind of engineered orange carrots. So that's a part of the House of Orange. Any questions or comments now, up till now? All right, let's continue. Let's talk about religious toleration. So if you guys studied the Reformation yet, you probably studied about Calvin or Calvinism and John Calvin. So Calvinism took roots in the Netherlands. The only two countries that established a Calvinist church was Scotland, which had a Presbyterian Calvinist church, and the Dutch created a Calvinist church. Even though they allowed other denominations of Protestantism, the Dutch became the main one. And it kind of like fitted their culture a little bit, the seriousness, the work ethic. That's something that attracted a lot of the merchants and the finances, people and stored like that. But they did show religious toleration to Jews who were fleeing the Inquisition and the persecution. Also, Lutheran received toleration, and the Anabaptists. Anyone knows who are the Anabaptists? Anyone who studied the Anabaptists? Tell me who the Anabaptists are. Or what's their problem? I mean, they don't have a problem, but what are people saying? Yes, correct. Very good. So they believed in adult baptism. They believe if you're a baby, you're not really asked about that. And that was a very controversial thing. If you studied Martin Luther in Germany, they were persecuted and prosecuted. So some of them also received religious freedom. Anabaptists, very good example for minority sect or heretics for that time, accused of heresy for believing in adult baptism. Very well. So it created, yes, they also rejected the state authorities and religious practices. So that was, they were kind of like hated both from the Protestant and the Catholic, kind of got pursued from both sides. So yes, very good. Anabaptist, good point to write. But anyway, the fact that they allowed freedom of religion, and we mentioned even separatists, the people who later on went to Plymouth, they lived in the Netherlands for 13 years, from 1607 to 1620. If you're taking a push, that's an important group. They also moved to the Netherlands to experience freedom of religions. So it's this religious toleration that helped basically create a cosmopolitan society and increase their commerce. And a classic example, if you look at the shift from Antwerp, modern day Belgium, to Amsterdam, that you have so many successful business people, finance people, merchants moving from Antwerp to Amsterdam, and Amsterdam turns to profit from this kind of, like, if you want, like this huge intellect business migration that is moving, and so forth. Again, we're not going to mention all the people that migrated or famous people. We'll just mention a couple. Baruch Spinoza, also known as Benedict Spinoza, one of the greatest Enlightenment philosophers of the time, and also wrote a lot of critical things against the Bible for that time. He was a Portuguese Jew that fled to the Netherlands and wrote, his major work is Ethics. And he basically got excommunicated even from the Jewish community, but he managed to work and write many important things in philosophy. So he's an important figure if you want to use. Another one, the famous René Descartes. Anyone know Descartes' most famous saying is? You don't have to write it in Latin, you can write it in English. What's Descartes' most famous quote? Anyone? I think, therefore I exist. Cogito ergo sum. So he actually also lived in the Netherlands from 1628 to 1649, and found a home for his really radical beliefs for that time. And he wrote actually some of his greatest work during that time when he lived in Amsterdam and Leiden, and kind of really revolutionized mathematics and philosophy. So he has several things, but two fields that he was very important at. Okay, so now reaching to the topic that most people are most interested when it comes to the history of the Netherlands, of course, is relating to the art. So in the mid 17th century, basically the Dutch, or what is known as the Golden Age, that's the topic of today, but it was also the Golden Age of the Dutch art, which Amsterdam was the center of. Also Delft had a very prosperous art scene. And because of the economic prosperity that the Netherlands experienced, it gave a stage for many artists to receive a lot of commissions for painting famous people such as Rembrandt, Frans Hals, Jan Stein, and Peter Hoch, that really flourished during that time. Now, interestingly enough, if you look at most of the Dutch paintings compared to other European paintings of the time, they're not, most of them have nothing to do with religion. Most paintings, if you look around Europe, are still, even in the Renaissance and Baroque, still a big topic is religion. But because the Dutch were Calvinists, and Calvinists or did not, were against painting, or they were very iconoclastic. Iconoclasm referred to their destroying pictures and paintings. They believed sola scriptura. If you only look at the Bible says thou shalt not make a statue. So they basically were against artworks. So that created a whole different genre, several kinds of genre paintings that were unique to the Netherlands, that were not about religion but other topics. It's kind of disputed, different historical books, but I'm going to go with the more common theory that the Dutch were the first one to introduce the oil painting, going all the way back to Van Eyck, who was way before the Renaissance. So the storyline doesn't go. Even though oil painting might have originated from China, the Dutch had an important influence in bringing the oil painting, and that became a more common method for painting, and kind of brought in more realistic elements in the painting. And there were many revolutionized painters during that time, and they painted a variety of genre things. They had domestic interior. They're more focused on the day-to-day life of people. They had more clients, wealthy people that came over to these painters and wanted portraiture of themselves. And because it was not about religion, a whole new market emerged, and people were willing to experiment more with their painting. And the painter was in the Netherlands was not considered, it wasn't considered like an art. It was more of like a craft. So in Europe, like people like Da Vinci experienced this whole status of I am a painter. In the Netherlands, it was kind of like more of a craft, like that a person like being a goldsmith or something like that. Okay, so let's talk about several genres that were very, very interesting. First up, portraiture was a very lucrative business for painters, because you had a lot of successful, rich Amsterdam class, this up and coming nouveau riche. They're making a lot of money, and they wanted portraiture of themselves. Even though many of them were Calvinists, so they were conservative, so they did not want to show off their wealth and have too many colors. They still wanted to be seen as God-fearing people. So it was a fine art balance between how to portray, to draw people, show their wealth, but not come off as being show-offs, if you will. And most famous painters for portraiture were Frans Hals and Rembrandt van Rijn, and Judith Lister too. I put it for her. So let's just start talking a little bit about Frans Hals. This is probably his most famous painting, The Laughing Cavalier. Interesting thing about this painting over here, that this person actually is not a cavalier, and he's actually not laughing. So the title sometimes could be very, very deceiving. It's actually, we know it today that it's a painting of somebody who's basically offering marriage from a person that he is sending basically this painting to. Judith Lister is a very, very interesting female painter. I really, really like this painting over here. It's a self-portrait. Anyone knows what does it mean when we have that was actually a question, a short answer question, and I saw in the AP classroom, they put this painting, and they asked, I'm not sure if it was her painting or another female's painting, and they asked, what does it mean, the painting in front of us, what does it show when it talks about women's status? So anyone knows, what does it show, the having a female doing a self-portrait, what does that depict about women status? Anyone? Okay, in any case, the fact that she's doing a self-portrait is actually showing that it's kind of self-importance, that she's doing a portrait of herself doing her craft. You can see she's very, very comfortable here. I posted a video on the bottom that talks a little bit about more details about this painting, but she's very comfortable turning around, and you get this sense of her taking pride in the fact that she is a female painter, and she was a successful female painter. And that's very interesting if we look at the status of women, not to say that there was equality yet for women in Europe during that time, but the fact that several women are becoming successful. She's the first one also to join a painters guild, which is also women were rarely allowed to join a guild. And we know also that she had a famous case against Frans Hals, that she had some people that trained with her, and they moved to Hals, and she did not get financial compensation for that. So she took him to court and actually won the case. So it's very, very interesting, a successful painter like Judith Lister, other than the fact that this is also a very beautiful painting. But it's interesting when we talk about women's status. Now, the most famous painter of the Netherlands throughout Dutch history has to be Rembrandt van Rijn, hands down. You might actually put in the poll that he's not your favorite painter. That's fine. But if you look on Dutch history, definitely Rembrandt van Rijn is the most famous painter in Dutch history. Any Van Gogh fans out there getting upset? So I'm also a big Van Gogh fan, but in Dutch history, definitely Rembrandt van Rijn is the most famous painter. If you need to use an example in the test, I will probably use Rembrandt van Rijn. So let's talk a little bit more details about him because he's the most famous, well-known painter in Dutch history. So he was born in Leiden. Even though his mom was Catholic, and there's some paintings that are a little Catholic-ish, and he moved to Amsterdam in the 1630s. He was one out of 9 children, and he set up a studio in Amsterdam and became very, very successful, very, very quickly. And interesting enough, a lot of the painters we're talking about kind of find a genre for themselves, or kind of found a niche. Some people did portraiture, some people did landscapes, some people did still images. Rembrandt actually did all of it. There was no topic that he wasn't good. He did historical painting, he did portraiture, he did groups. He could do everything. But one of the things that he did the most, and that's very, very fascinating about him, that around 10% of his work had to do with self-portraiture. He painted himself throughout his life, from a young person to an old person. That's very, very interesting because we kind of see the aging process in Rembrandt painting. So he became very, very rich, very, very successful, bought himself a huge townhouse. He actually married a wealthy woman also, but his downside that he was an addict to, he was shopaholic basically, and he bought a lot of things in auctions. So he overspent way, way too much, and eventually ended up being bankrupt and almost had to sell a lot of his paintings, and actually did not die very well. But that's a little bit about his biography. Let's talk about some of his famous paintings. One of the first paintings that give a reputation. Again, portraiture is very, very important. Here we have a portraiture of Nicholas Rots, who was a wealthy businessman in the fur trade business. It's interesting enough because he's actually wearing the thing that he's actually in business. So we don't know if he actually came up with the idea to wear that, or Rembrandt's idea was to wear that on him, but it's very, very smart, and it works very, very well. And this is kind of like, if you listen to my previous lecture about Baroque, so the light kind of comes in. There's not too many colors here, but we definitely see the light around him, and it's very, very subtle. And the eyes are very, very showing like sincerity. So this person is trying, again, to show his wealth, and is trying to show his seriousness in his profession. So that's Nicholas Rots. Rembrandt also painted basically the rich and the wealthy elite of Amsterdam. So you have a lot of merchants, you have a lot of bankers, business people, and a lot of them are looking for portraiture. The Tripp family is one of the wealthiest family in the Netherlands, and this is a portrait of Maria Tripp, who was not married yet. So again, Rembrandt kind of found the balance, how to again make somebody seem she's very wealthy, but again, being a Calvinist, you don't want to come across as being way, way too overly flaunting your wealth. It's like Jesus warned, about being wealthy, that it's going to make it harder for you to reach heaven. What's that famous saying? Easy for a camel to go through the head of a pin than a rich man going into heaven, something like that. If anyone remembers the quote, if I got it wrong, put it in the chat box. But we can still see the wealth of this woman. It's this beautiful lace. It's the necklace around. But again, trying to show off your wealth, but not be a show off. Kind of like sliding it in. And that's another easy way for you to identify Calvinist paintings a lot of times, or Protestants a lot of times is black and white. If you see a lot of colors, you see a lot of red, you think like, okay, this is more Catholic. So this is where we see these portraiture of people who want to come off to show their wealth, but not pushing it too much. The next stage after portraiture is a painter. If you want to elevate yourself, you have to start doing a group photo, or like a group portraiture of a bigger group. So this painting really elevated Rembrandt's name in the Netherlands. I'm very, very fascinated by this painting. It's called The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Tulip. And so it's basically a guild of the surgeons. So this is Dr. Tulip here. And it's interesting because we're seeing here a dissection. And interesting enough, people actually paid money to go and see a dissection. I know it's very, very weird. And what is not showing this in this painting, that around it there's a huge group amount of people surrounding them, and they all came to see this anatomy lesson. Not only they came to see it, they actually paid money to go to see this lesson. Isn't that fascinating and weird? Even like men ask women on dates and like bought tickets to see this thing. So it didn't happen that often. But anyway, Dr. Tulip over here is, okay, here you got a quote. Very good. I think you got it. Great. So in this lesson here, Dr. Tulip over here is showing something in his hand. He's basically showing what happens when you pull the string in the arm, like what happens. This is what he's gesturing with his hand, that he's showing over here with his hand. What happens, what he's doing under here for this. By the way, this is a criminal that they're dissecting. And each one is looking, look at the people, everyone is looking. This guy is staring directly at us. These people are actually focusing over here. So it's a very, very interesting and dynamic painting, the anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulip. By the way, Dr. Tulip, little biography about him. He was a big charlatan. I would not take a surgery from him. I read that one of his recommended remedies for a sick person was to drink 50 cups of tea. So I don't know, take that example. Don't go to, and by the way, his real name was not Dr. Tulip. He just changed it to Tulip because Tulip was like very popular during that time. But anyway, I know way too much information about Dr. Tulip. So here's a question that appeared in a review book about that time. So let's see if, from our newfound knowledge, if we can answer this question. Anyone want to pick this one? An art historian might use the image, this image that we just had, to support which of the following generalization about art in the 17th century? Anyone? Look at this answer and try to figure out what it is. So is it A, Baroque artists used painting to promote religious power? B, art came to reflect secular outlook of progress and the public good? C, new movement rejected Renaissance idea, naturalism and perspective? D, painting emphasized Enlightenment ideas and political power of citizenship. Anybody else wants to give us an answer? Just one person? Go big or go home. All right, you got it. It's B, of course. Art came to reflect secular outlook and progress and the public good. So we're seeing like it's, even though you have to take into context that Dutch painting is around Baroque area, but they're not promoting religious things, and it's not necessarily rejecting a Renaissance idea of naturalism and perspective. They still have accuracy in these painting, enlightenment, political power, citizenship, not really that. Okay, good answer. Sorry. This is also a very interesting portraiture of Rembrandt. Is actually, you can see there's a similarity to this Titian painting. This is Rembrandt in the height of his power in 1640 here. I love the sleeve that it comes just across. It's kind of like, this is when Rembrandt is very, very successful on the top of his game. He probably saw this Titian painting himself and actually was influenced by that, the sleeve coming a little bit in the front. So he seems like on the make, but if you look closely in the eyes, he might be a little bit shocked that he is so successful. So there's so many self-portraits of Rembrandt, it's hard to pick from which one. Another very, very famous Rembrandt painting, of course, is the Night Watch. And Rembrandt here did something like spectacular. He took this group of people that, if you look at this painting, it seems like they're going into war. Like, there's like a huge battle. But these guys are basically some sort of like a militia, a group of guys who basically meet every few months, and play soldiers. They're not really going into fights, but it seems like that. So what Rembrandt really revolutionized painting with this famous painting, that he took, instead of a group of people just standing and shoving them together and like everyone shoves in to get into the group portraiture, what he did here, he put people in different positions and put them in action and motion coming directly at you. If you see this painting in live, it really seems like these guys are marching directly, and each one is doing something different. And the center, the person here, even though this guy's in light, this is the commander who's leading the group into the march. Like made him seem like action figures, even though they were not. They were just basically doing crossing street or something like that. Okay. More genre painting that we're talking about. The Dutch, if one of the most common painting the Dutch did is, they were very, very interested in seeing man and woman at work, writing letters, playing music, kind of like doing their daily activities. That kind of became like their new, instead of religious paintings, what people do to day-to-day life became more and more interested for them. Now, if one person really mastered the day-to-day life activity, probably the second most famous painter from the Netherlands is Johannes Vermeer. And he became the master of light, as he was called, and he came from the town of Delft. His father was an art dealer and an innkeeper, and Vermeer kind of continued the family jobs. So we know very, very little about him. He was not a successful painter as Rembrandt was. Their estimation, there are around maybe 35 plus paintings of him. He worked like as an art dealer also, like his father, and an innkeeper. And he really was fascinated by women and domestic scenes of women. And some of them were some relatives of his patrons, some of them family members. And he painted several, very few landscape or portraiture, but he's very, very interested in more females doing daily things, and very, very interested in the light, the reflection of light, which he mastered. And tragically, he did not have a very, he was not successful during his lifetime. He had a lot of children, 11 children, and he died very quickly, very abruptly due to financial strain. So it's very, very sad that he could not experience, because his painting gave people so much happiness that we enjoy today. A very famous painting of Vermeer when it comes to landscape is the view of Delft, where he's from. And it's amazing, like almost 2/3 of the painting is just given to the skyline. Oops, sorry. It's very, very interesting over here, and the reflection in the water. And again, the light. If there's one thing that connects all Vermeer paintings, it's got to be that light coming in over the town. There's another painter that did very similar. This is a little street by Vermeer, which again, you can split it into two. We have a woman sitting on the right side. We have a woman on the left side. And again, always remember Calvinism, or it's always about the work ethic, always being involved in your trade. And we have two kids here that we cannot see their face. We can see their back, but there's a discommunication between these two ladies. So that's another very interesting painting of Vermeer. And Peter Hoch made very, very similar paintings to Vermeer. We don't know if he actually saw them, but there's a lot of similarity. You see Hoch painting here on the right and Vermeer on the left. And Hoch is not as known as Vermeer by most people today, but I really, really love his paintings too. This is probably Vermeer's the painting that he liked the most, and it's called The Art of Painting. So what we see here, we're seeing Vermeer himself painting. And the interesting story behind this painting is Vermeer had very, very few paintings. He only did maybe 1 to 3 to 2 paintings a year, and he barely had any painting in his studio. So the famous story was that somebody came to his art gallery wanting to see a painting, and Vermeer did not have any painting to show. So it was very, very embarrassing to him. So after that, he decided to make a big painting. Most of his paintings were actually really, really small. He decided to make this huge portraiture and named it The Art of Painting. And this is the painting that basically he had in his dealership. So anytime somebody came to be interested to see his work or his skill, this is the painting that they saw. And that's one of the only paintings that his family was left with when he died, even though I think they had to sell this one too. So it's very interesting what's going on here. We can kind of see that's another very classic Vermeer thing, kind of like the curtain open to kind of reveal something, what's going on in here. And again, the painter putting himself in the painting is very interesting. This is probably his most famous known painting, The Girl with the Pearl Earring, which is also known as the Dutch Mona Lisa. There's a lot of comparison between that and the Mona Lisa. Even though there's a lot of things that are different. I'm not going to go into all of that, but there's something very intriguing, like the Mona Lisa, about this woman. What is she thinking about? What is happening here? It seems like she's turning to us. The earring is very, very big. The turban she is wearing. So it's a very fascinating painting. There's a lot of information, even though it's, again, very, very small in size, probably the size of the book that I'm holding here. Probably around this, seeing it. So it's not as big, but it still really captured the imagination of so many people of this painting. And again, notice the lips over here, like she's just opening her mouth as she's going to say something. It's very, so like, we're very fascinated by paintings like that, and so forth. Also the Milkmaid, which again shows us classic Dutch painting is people in the middle of doing their day-to-day work. She's doing something very basic, just pouring milk, but we're very, very fascinating by the pouring of the milk. Classic Vermeer, also the light coming in and the reflection. It's really, really amazing paintings. A lot of people just look at Vermeer like I look at Vermeer. It just makes me relax, makes me calm. The colors are so relaxed or beautiful, and that's why if I had to put like in the bottom, I would definitely pick Vermeer as being my top guy. It's just, I enjoy. I mean, there's not a right and wrong what painting is supposed to do, but for me, I feel very, very relaxed. And Gombrich actually, who had the most famous best-selling book about art, called this one of the greatest masterpiece of all time, and that's a professional art historian felt about that. Only religious painting that he had, actually saw this one at the Met, was very, very fascinating. This is a Catholic painting that Vermeer did. We know his wife was Catholic. He converted to Catholicism for her. There was kind of like a Catholic hiding going on in the Netherlands. This is a very interesting painting here because we have the cross over here, we have the snake. It's a lot of Catholic themes are going on here. And the funny thing, when I saw this painting in the museum in the Met, a lot of people were kind of like disturbed by this painting. I gave it a lot of attention because it's a Vermeer painting. And sure enough, when I took the audio tour and clicked it in, the tour guide told us that this painting is the most disturbing painting they're saying. I was like, I thought that that's what he was going to say. That was very, very interesting that he said that. There was also comic paintings. This is a very interesting thing, or kind of like things going wrong. And the most famous painter in that category is Jan Stein, or Steen, if you say it more in the Dutch. There's a famous Dutch saying that they still say in the Netherlands, that if your house is a big mess, they call it like a Jan Steen house. Like, so if your house is a mess, you go to somebody's house who's a mess, you can just say your house looked like a Jan Steen house. Also, we have Hals, Frans Hals here, a young woman and a woman taking a picture in an inn. So again, we don't know what's going on with this couple here taking like a selfie, what are they up to? So it's the laughter that's very, very interesting, because a lot of the paintings are so serious during that time that there are more these comical painting going on in the Netherlands. This is another famous paintings of Jan Steen that you can see over here. Like there's like something completely going, a lot of things completely going wrong in this painting, instability. It's very, very comical. This one is actually in the titles, like beware of luxury. There's, look what's going on. The kids are completely out of control. Like 20 different things. There's just so many minute details in the painting over here. The leg is on top. This woman over here. This one is like whispering. You feel like something's going to fall from the top on top of their head. Very, very unstable situation. So just to wrap it up, the golden age of the Dutch basically eventually all falls apart due to the fact that they're involved in way too many wars, and eventually they lose some of these wars, and everything comes crumbling down when Napoleon basically captures the Netherlands. Okay.